Did you know that Scotland has a coastline longer than the entire country of India, or that an area larger than the city of Glasgow is currently being bought up by international billionaires for carbon credits, creating what some call a man-made desert? Scotland is far more surprising and far crazier than you might think. Today you're going to discover 44 incredible facts that will completely change the way you see this wild land, from its secret Viking debts to the sunken empire that nearly destroyed the country. Let's get into it. Fact 44, the 433 Club. Half of all the privately owned rural land in Scotland is held by just 433 people or companies. This makes Scotland's land ownership one of the most concentrated models in the entire Western world. While millions of people live in crowded cities, a tiny group of owners controls nearly the entire countryside, meaning more than half the rural landscape is in the hands of a few hundred individuals. Fact 43, the green rush. Land prices in the Highlands are surging right now because of something called greenwashing. Large corporations and investment funds are buying up massive estates to use for carbon credits and renaturalization. They are not doing this for the people who live there. Instead, they are using the land to offset their own emissions elsewhere. Fact 42, foreign billionaires. A massive portion of the Scottish Highlands is owned by international billionaires who rarely visit their holdings. The largest private landowner in the country is Anders Holch Povelsen, a Danish billionaire who owns more than 200,000 acres across several estates. His holdings are so vast they cover more land than many small countries, and most of the year these massive stretches of wilderness stay empty. Fact 41, the timberbank. Scotland's vast forests are increasingly being seen as a safe asset by international pension funds. They are buying up woodland to secure timber supplies and carbon sequestration rights. For these global investors, the Scottish landscape is essentially a high-interest savings account made of trees, providing a stable return that is hard to find in traditional markets. Fact 40, the clearance legacy. Most tourists see the empty glens of the Highlands as an untouched wilderness, but those landscapes are actually a man-made desert. In the 18th and 19th centuries, tens of thousands of people were forcibly removed during the Highland clearances to make way for sheep farming. What looks like natural scenery is actually the result of a brutal economic purge that emptied the glens of their human history. Fact 39th, the sporting desert. Vast areas of the Highlands are kept as deer forests, which are treeless landscapes managed purely for trophy hunting. These estates are kept intentionally empty of trees and people to provide the perfect environment for deer stalking. This management prevents natural reforestation and keeps the land in a state of artificial barrenness, purely to serve the interests of the hunting industry. Fact 38. Land monopoly versus public share. Approximately 83% of rural Scotland is owned by private entities such as trusts and individuals. Only 17% of the land is held by public bodies, charities or local communities. This massive imbalance means that most decisions about the Scottish environment are made by a very small number of private interests rather than the public who actually live there. Fact 37th, the 80% trap. Around 80% of Scotland's 5.5 million people live in a tiny strip of land called the Central Belt. This area between Glasgow, Edinburgh, Stirling and Dundee holds nearly everyone. That leaves huge parts of the country almost entirely empty, as millions of people are packed into just a fraction of the total landmass. Fact 36, the Highland Void. The Highland Council area has a population density of only about 8 people per square kilometre. To put that in perspective, that is a lower density than some parts of the Sahara Desert or the rural plains of Mongolia. You could walk for 50 miles in some parts of the north without ever seeing another human being, making it one of the most desolate places in Europe. Fact 35, Tower Hamlets versus Sutherland. The London borough of Tower Hamlets is 2,000 times more densely populated than the Highland Council area. While people in London are fighting for every square inch of space, people in the north live in a landscape where the nearest neighbour might be several miles away. It's a contrast that shows just how lopsided the UK's population distribution has become. Fact 34. Glasgow's density. Glasgow City is the most densely populated area in Scotland, with over 3,500 people per square kilometre. Despite this crowding, you can drive out of the city centre and reach a total desolate wilderness in less than 30 minutes. It is one of the few places in the world where a major metropolis sits right on the edge of a void, emphasising just how sharp the divide is between the city and the wild. Fact 33. The island tax. Life on a remote Scottish island comes with a hidden cost that locals call the island tax. Because almost everything is delivered by ferry, basics like fuel, bread and milk can cost 30% more than they do on the mainland. Even a simple grocery shop can feel like a luxury purchase for families living in these isolated communities. Fact 32. The renewable paradox. Scotland produces enough wind energy to power itself twice over, yet many people in the Highlands pay the highest electricity bills in the UK. This happens because they are charged more for grid distribution costs. It means the people living closest to the giant wind turbines are often the ones struggling most to pay for power, and that is a massive irony for a green energy leader. Fact 31st. 10,000 kilometres of coastline. Scotland's coastline is so jagged and full of islands that if you stretched it out into a straight line, it would be longer than India's entire coast. This means that despite its small land area, Scotland has an incredibly massive maritime presence, stretching across thousands of miles of cold Atlantic water. Fact 30. Inhabited versus uninhabited. Scotland has over 900 offshore islands, but only about 90 of them are actually inhabited. That means 90% of the islands are essentially abandoned or were never settled in the first place. They have become sanctuary areas for wildlife rather than people, leaving the vast majority of the archipelago to the birds and seals. Fact 29. Ghost villages. On some islands, holiday homes and short-term lets now outnumber the homes of permanent residents by 2 to 1. This creates ghost villages that are full of life in the summer but become silent, empty shells during the winter months. It is an economic reality that is slowly killing off island communities as the lights go out for half the year. Fact 28. Population drop. In the last decade, 10 out of Scotland's 32 council areas saw their populations decrease. Most of these declines are happening in the west and north as young people move away in search of work. This leaves behind an ageing population in some of the most beautiful yet economically isolated places on Earth. Fact 27th. The £1 house. In a desperate attempt to revitalise dying areas, local councils like Inverclyde have experimented with selling derelict houses for just £1. The catch is that buyers must commit to spending at least £50,000 on renovations. They also have to live in the property for several years, making it a long-term commitment to the local area. Fact 26. Saving speedrun. Inverclyde is consistently ranked as the fastest place in the United Kingdom to save for a home deposit. An average couple there can save enough for a deposit in just 1 year and 6 months. Contrast that with London, where the same goal could take 10 or 15 years of extreme saving, and you will see why the North is becoming attractive to people relocating. Fact 25. The £19 million handback. Even with a massive housing crisis across the UK, Inverclyde recently had to return £19.5 million in social housing funds to the government. This happened because construction delays and red tape meant they could not spend the money in time. It is a shocking failure when so many people are desperate for affordable homes. Fact 24. Island for a flat. You can currently buy a 25 to 90 acre uninhabited Scottish island for between £150,000 and £350,000. That is roughly the same price as a small one-bedroom flat in a northern English city or the cost of 2 high-end garages in London. You could literally own an entire island for the price of a parking space in the capital. But here is the thing, while the money makes sense on paper, the laws that govern the land are what makes Scotland truly unique. Fact 23rd. Edinburgh rent gap. While general costs in Edinburgh are lower than in London, the rental market is a different story. Edinburgh's student rental market is now the least affordable in the UK outside of London. The demand is far outstripping the supply of available flats, pushing prices to levels that are pricing out the people who actually study there. Fact 22. Free university. One of the biggest economic differences between Scotland and the rest of the UK is tuition. Students who live in Scotland pay £0 in tuition fees for their first degree. This is a massive advantage compared to the £9,000 per year that students in England have to pay, saving graduates tens of thousands of pounds in debt. Fact 21. Public water. In England, the water companies are private, and they have faced massive criticism over leaks and sewage. In Scotland, the water is 100% publicly owned through a company called Scottish Water. This means that any profits are reinvested back into the infrastructure, rather than going to private shareholders, keeping the bills lower and the water cleaner. Fact 20. The Glasgow Subway Circle. The Glasgow subway is the third oldest underground system in the entire world, falling only behind London and Budapest. It's a tiny system that travels in a perfect circle, and it never leaves the city centre. Locals often call it the Clockwork Orange, and it remains one of the shortest commutes in the world. Fact 19. The Scots Mile. Before the English pound and system were fully adopted, a Scots mile was actually 1.12 times longer than an English mile. This means many ancient maps and land deeds describe territories that are 12% larger than a modern reading would suggest. It's led to some very interesting legal disputes over historic boundaries that are still being settled today. Fact 18. Trespassing doesn't exist. In Scotland, the Land Reform Act of 2003 gave everyone a legal right to responsible access to almost all land and water. This means you can legally walk, camp or swim across 99% of Scotland's private land. You will never be charged with trespassing as long as you respect the environment you are moving through. Fact 17. No trespassers signs. Because of the right to roam, signs that say private property or no trespassing have no legal weight in Scotland. Hikers often ignore them because the law is on their side. In fact, it is illegal for landowners to try to block public access with misleading signage. Fact 16. Crofting protection. Crofting is a unique type of land tenure found only in the Highlands and Islands. A crofter has a legal right to their small-scale unit of land, a right so strong that it is almost impossible for a landlord to evict them. This system has preserved small-scale farming in a way that never happened in England, protecting the culture of the Highlands. Fact 15. Community right to buy. Scottish communities have a specific legal right to buy the land they live on if the owner puts it up for sale. This has led to the successful community buyout of entire islands like Eigg. The residents there now collectively own and manage their own land and grid, proving that communities can thrive without a billionaire landlord. Fact 14. Nordic law. In the islands of Orkney and Shetland, some lands still operate under Udal law, an ancient Norse legal system. Under this law, the Crown does not automatically own the seabed or the shoreline. This gives locals unique economic rights that do not exist anywhere else in the UK, especially when it comes to offshore resources. Fact 13. The world's shortest flight. The flight between the islands of Westray and Papa Westray in Orkney is the shortest scheduled commercial flight on Earth. The entire journey takes just 53 seconds in good winds. That is less time than it takes most people to walk from their car to their front door. Fact 12. Palm trees at Moscow latitude. Edinburgh is located further north than Moscow, yet palm trees can grow in the Highland village of Plockton. This is thanks to the North Atlantic Drift, which brings warm water from the Gulf Stream. It gives Scotland a much milder climate than its latitude suggests, allowing tropical plants to thrive in the north. Fact 11. Viking heritage. The islands of Shetland were actually part of Norway until 1472. They were handed over to Scotland as part of a royal dowry for a wedding between King James III and Margaret of Denmark. The full amount of the dowry was never paid, which is why some people in Shetland still feel a stronger connection to Norway than to Edinburgh. Fact 10. One-person islands. Over the years, many small islands have seen their populations collapse until only a single person or a single family remained. Islands like Soay and Tanera Mor have spent years being managed by just one resident. They live in total isolation in the middle of the Atlantic, maintaining a way of life that is almost vanished. Fact 9. Rockall. Scotland claims ownership of Rockall, a tiny and completely uninhabitable rock sitting 300 miles out in the Atlantic. The claim is fiercely disputed by Ireland, Iceland, and Denmark. This is because whoever owns the rock also gets the rights to the fishing and minerals in the massive zone surrounding it, which is worth billions. Fact 8. Kilda. This remote archipelago was evacuated in 1930, and it is one of the only spots in the UK to hold dual UNESCO World Heritage status. Despite that fame, it is almost entirely inaccessible to the public. It is currently used as a high-tech tracking station by the military, making it one of the most secretive spots in the Atlantic. Fact 7. Space Hub. Scotland is currently aiming to become the leading space hub for Europe. The Sutherland Spaceport is being built right now, and it is set to be the first vertical launch site on the United Kingdom mainland. The remote wilderness that was once cleared for sheep is now being used to launch satellites into orbit, bringing high-tech jobs to the empty glens. Fact 6. The oil buffer. Most people assume Scotland's economy depends entirely on North Sea oil, but that is not the case. Even if you remove the oil and gas sector completely, Scotland's GDP per capita remains higher than almost every other part of the UK, except for London and the South East. It is a significantly more diverse economy than the headlines suggest. Fact 5. Whisky infrastructure. The Scotch whisky industry is so large that it supports more than 40,000 jobs. On islands like Islay, the entire infrastructure and even the ferry schedules are dictated by the needs of the distilleries. In some parts of the country, whiskey is not just a drink, but the literal engine of the entire local economy, driving everything from transport to tourism. Fact 4. The standing charge scam. Despite producing a massive surplus of renewable energy, people in rural Scotland pay the highest standing charges for electricity in the UK. They are technically furthest from the urban grid, so they are penalised for the cost of maintaining the wires. It is a bitter pill for those living in the shadows of the turbines. Fact 3. The Rockall disconnect. While Rockall is just a rock, the international dispute over it has led to multiple standoffs. Scotland once sent a team of SAS soldiers to bolt a plaque to the rock to cement their claim. It is a tiny piece of geography that could spark a major international court case over billions in subsea resources that sit right underneath it. Fact 2. The Darien Scheme. In the late 1600s, Scotland attempted to build its own empire by colonising a swampy area in Panama called Darien. The project was a total disaster, and it cost the country 25% of its entire wealth. This economic ruin was the main reason Scotland was forced to merge with England in 1707, to avoid total bankruptcy and to save the nation. Fact 1. The real St Kilda. We end with the ultimate example of Scotland's extreme isolation. On the island of St Kilda, the community lived in total isolation for thousands of years, developing their own unique culture and language. When they were finally evacuated in 1930, they left behind a landscape that's now a ghost world. It's the perfect symbol of Scotland, a place of incredible resilience and beauty, but one where the geography itself can sometimes be too harsh for humans to handle. After learning these 44 insane facts about Scotland, tell us which one you liked the most, or which one surprised you the most. Leave it in the comments and let's see how many of us picked the same one. If you think we missed something, we would love to hear from you. There is another video on the screen right now so you can keep exploring the geography of our country. But before you go, Do not forget to subscribe and give this a like so we can keep learning together. See you in the next one.